How's it going, guys? My name is Sergeant Seeloff, and today I want to be going over word knowledge with you guys. This is to better help prepare you guys for both the Picat and or the ASVAB. So what I want to go over for the words that I'm going to be covering today is the actual word itself, the pronunciation, the word definition, the word put in a sentence, and then a trigger word. The most important thing here is definitely the trigger word. The reason being is knowing all of this is nice and dandy, but at the end of the day, if you have a trigger word that can kind of trigger your memory and help you remember what it is, that's what you want to do. And one of the biggest study habits I have is when you eventually make your flashcards for the words, one of the biggest things to do is if you don't remember the word 100%, just say you don't know. Don't guess, because if you guess, you will therefore make studying inefficient because you're going to remember the wrong definition of what it is. So with that all being said, let's get started. So the first word is going to be emphasize. As you see right here, it's going to be pronounced emphasize. Emphasize is to give special importance or prominence to something in speaking or writing. The word in an actual statement, he spoke louder to emphasize his next point in the speech. Now the trigger word I chose for this is to accentuate, because it exaggerates what the circumstance is. So that's the first word. The next word is perilous. It's pronounced per-il-less, so perilous. What it means is to be full of danger or risk. A perilous journey south. My trigger word for this one is going to be hazardous. Inept. Inept. Inept means to having or showing no skill or to be clumsy. The way you can put it in a sentence, I was amazed at how inept he was at her job. She was at her job. The trigger word I'm going to choose to use for this is bungling. So remember, bungling. The next word, adage. As you see right here, adage. Adage. The definition, a proverb or short statement expressing a general truth. Now to put it in a sentence, despite what the old adage says, I like to have my cake and eat it, then have another piece. The trigger word I'm going to use for this is proverb. Admonition. As you can see right here, admonition. Admonition. An act or action of admonitioning, authoritative, counsel, or warning. To put it in a sentence, the teacher's harsh admonition applied to all of the students who refused to do their work and at risk of failing. The trigger word I'm going to use for this is approval. So admonition is to be approval. Decry. Decry. So the word is decry. What that is, to publicly denounce. To put it in a sentence, they decried human rights abuses. The trigger word that I'm going to choose to use for this is disparage. Moratorium. So to pronounce it, moratorium. A temporary prohibition of an activity. To put it in a sentence, an avid fisherman, Billy, was upset when he learned of the fishing moratorium. The trigger word I'm going to use for this is suspension. Cajole. Persuade someone to do something by sustained, coaxing, or flattery. To put it in a sentence, he hoped to cajole her into selling the house. The trigger word I will use for this is wheedle. Nepotism. Nepotism. So it's pronounced nepotism. To hire relatives. To put it in a sentence, his years in office were marked by corruption and nepotism. The trigger word I'm going to use for this is hiring relatives. Contentious. The way you pronounce it, contentious. Contentious. Causing or likely to cause an argument controversial. To put it in a sentence, as a rule, I tend to avoid contentious topics of conversation, which might lead to arguments. The trigger word I'm going to use for this is quarrelsome. Unpretentious. The way you pronounce it, unpretentious. Unpretentious. Not attempting to impress others by overcompensation. To put it in a sentence, it is unpretentious enough to tolerate hiking clothed patrons. The trigger word I'm going to choose to use for this is simple. Broach. To pronounce it, broach. Broach. Raise a sensitive or difficult subject for discussion. To put it in a sentence, so far she hadn't found a way to broach the subject with Brandon. The trigger word I'm going to use for this is to mention. Communique. So to pronounce it, communique. Communique. An official announcement or statement, especially one made to the media. To put it in a sentence, none of the recommendations were revealed in detail in the communique. The trigger word I'm going to choose to use for this is message. Virulent. The way you pronounce it, virulent. Virulent. Marked by a rapid, severe, and destructive course. To put it into a sentence, it is a feature of viruses that with time they become less virulent. So the trigger word I'm going to use for this is powerful. Lambaste. So as it's pronounced, lambaste. Lambaste. To criticize someone or something harshly. To put it in a sentence, they lambasted the report as a gross distortion of the truth. The trigger word I'm going to use for this is chastise. So the reason I had us go through this is so that you not only know how to pronounce and understand the definition, but you also know what to use it for in a sentence and the proper way to use it. But beyond that, the most important thing I would say for studying is purely the trigger word. The trigger word I highly encourage, even if you have to go back, rewind, pause as you need, put the word and put the trigger word. The trigger word's going to basically be your answer. And the reason I set it up like that is because I put out a sheet just like this. And the reason for this is so that we can actually go through the motion of it. So the first thing is, you want to go through these words and you want to make sure that you're memorizing them, right? So emphasize, accentuate, boom. I'm correct, so that's good, right? Basically, you want to go through the motions of continually practicing them. First, I would say start in order. Go all the way down the list and do it in order. But the moment you feel comfortable with that, I would say do it out of order. Once you start doing it out of order, it's taking your mind off of the memory of it, and it just kind of, it's just in your subconscious. You've already memorized it and whatnot. And as I stated before, make sure that you're not guessing. If you don't know the answer, then just look at the answer and start over, okay? But the point of this is to be flawless. And I hope that you can use this. You can go with it step by step. And basically, let's say emphasize, for example. When I ask you emphasize, I want you to repeat what the answer is, pause if you need to, and then once you give the answer, that's when you'll unpause and we'll go to the actual definition, okay? So the first one, emphasize. So that should be accentuate, right? Perilous, that should be hazardous. Inept, that should be bungling. Adage, that should be proverb. Admonition, that should be approval. Decry, that should be disparage. Moratorium, that should be suspension. Cajole, that should be wheedle. Nepotism, that should be hiring relatives. Contentious, that should be quarrelsome. Unpretentious, that should be simple. Broach, that should be mention. Communique, that should be message. Virulent, that should be powerful. Lambaste, that should be chastise. And that's exactly how you should go about it. I would do it like this, or if you can, I would get flashcards so that you can repetitively get in the practice of it. And as I stated, you're going to go down the list in order, and then once you feel comfortable about it, you're going to go out of order. Okay? And that's pretty much the words I want to cover today. I hope this helps.